This weekend, the church concludes her presentation of St. Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount. Last week's message from our Lord was, love your enemies, forgive all who have offended you, judge not lest you be judged, condemn not lest you be condemned. Underlying all of these prescriptions is charity, specifically the kind of love known as agape, willing good to the other person for their sake. This week's readings pick up from last week with some riddles and parables that Jesus uses to illustrate his teaching. Much of what he says has to do with the visual system, with our eyes and our vision. The first thing is that most of us would be pretty wary of letting a blind man lead us, say, across a busy street, right? I mean, even if he's been blind for quite a while, and his other senses have developed a heightened sensitivity to compensate for his not seeing, even though he has a white cane that everyone is supposed to observe and yield him the right of way, even though he can hear the traffic coming and going, I'm not letting a blind man lead me across the street, much less a really busy one like Main Street here in Gunbarrel City. And I think most of you would think the same. The chances of getting to the other side of the street unharmed are slim to none. We should not follow someone who can't help us, or worse, who could lead us to harm. Turning to Jesus' other example, this is something I have encountered countless times in my ophthalmology practice. I have seen many people with something in their eye. Farmers, ranchers, machinists, someone using a weed eater or a chainsaw without goggles, 4th of July revelers, and so on. Most of the time when someone came to me with an ocular foreign body, they had not taken proper precaution to protect their eyes, such as not using goggles when grinding or when working under a car, when dirt and other stuff could fall into their eyes. Or they'd been doing just plain stupid things, like shooting off fireworks with no goggles, or using a weed eater or edger without goggles, which, by the way, is really, really dumb. I would assess the injury to make sure nothing had entered into their eye, then remove the foreign body, although sometimes some of the big guys that came in, I had to pick them off the floor because they passed out when they thought I was going to drill on their eye. And then get the foreign body out and then take care and do the proper follow-up. So imagine the absurd picture of me trying to do this with a 2x4 sticking out of my own eye. I can't get to him. Afterwards, after taking out the foreign body from their eye, I was known to comment to my ophthalmic assistant something like, what an idiot he was for not protecting his eye. In other words, I made a judgment about the person and how stupid he was to not take the time to go to the other side of the shop to put on his glasses, rather than judging his actions. So, that was the plank in my eye that I needed to get rid of. Now, I hope most of you know that I would not knowingly berate my patients in these situations in an uncharitable way, but sadly, I have known doctors who are not very charitable in taking care of their patients, and I've known priests who are not anybody here, okay? I have known priests who are not very charitable in counseling their parishioners, who, after all, are like patients in many ways, in that they come to us sick in sin or grief or in desperate situations, seeking relief from what is hurting them. One time I was working in my own yard, and I saw a small place where I needed to use the weed eater. So I got it, and without goggles, stupid, started whacking the offending weeds, and something flew up and hit me in the eyelid. I muttered something I shouldn't have, put the thing down, and went and got the goggles, all the while thanking God that the projectile did not hit me in the eye itself. I was guilty of doing the same thing many of my patients had done, In other words, as Jesus said, I was being a hypocrite. Oh, and if it seems to you that I might just have been preaching to you about protecting your own eyes as the weather warms up and you get out in your own yards and use all these dangerous tools, you are correct. It wasn't a shameless ad, it was just protect yourselves. Just as literally I could not get near someone to remove a speck with a board projecting out of my own eye, so in dealing with others in their life situations, I have to get rid of my judgmental attitudes about things to be able to help them or to pray for them in the case of celebrities or TV personalities or politicians whose views I find abhorrent or even immoral, views against my own views or against civil law or God's law. That is where I find I have to watch out for the plank in my own eye. Folks, what our Lord Jesus has been telling us these last 3 Sundays is that we must exercise divine love for our families, our friends, our co-workers, with everyone. The kind of love that he shows toward us, which is unconditional and total. Whoa. He loves us whether we love him back or hate him. He prays for everyone and asks us to do the same. By the infinite mercy God showers on us, he forgives us if only we say, ideally in the sacrament of confession, that we are sorry, not just because we fear his punishment, which is imperfect contrition, but more so because we turned against him and offended him, which is perfect contrition. He wants us to forgive our enemies in the same way that he forgives us, praying for them and wishing the best for them in spite of how they've treated us. He wants us to show that love is in our hearts by the kind of words coming from our mouths, by the kind words coming from our mouths, rather than demonstrating the hardness of hearts and our faults by spewing harsh words in our speech. He wants us to get rid of our own blindness regarding our own faults before going after another regarding theirs. And that's what he means by taking the plank from our own eye before trying to rid someone of a little speck in theirs. Lent is almost upon us. We need to prepare for it. So let's use it as an opportunity to do some personal soul searching in how to deal charitably with others who deserve our forgiveness and love rather than being berated by one of us with a plank projecting from our own eye. Read over that list of suggested Lenten resolutions that Father Boland has given us in this weekend's bulletin. As I read over the list, it occurred to me that some of those things are going to be not so easy to implement. Call back to your minds what Father has preached about these last couple of weeks about holy silence, how we can enhance our relationship with God by incorporating silence into our own prayer. Make this coming Lent the best one you've ever experienced by expending a little bit of effort to lift up your hearts and minds to God.